Go.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Sons. As you can see, we have a little bit of a small group of people with us today. We have sort of 3.5 men with us today, but most importantly, we have a special guest. And I'm really disappointed in people because they didn't get the pun that kept putting forward in our announcement. With us today, though, is former. What did you win, Kidd? Which did you win? GenCon or Worlds?
I won GenCon for the joust and then Melee, LOL Melee, Worlds
That
2014.
Okay, so double
Jersey, but
champion Kidd Seefeldt. So, Kidd, besides what you've won, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself for the second edition players who only really know you from your face getting eaten by all three dire wolves, I think, right?
I think only one or two of them are actually eating me. And then
Right.
the third one's kind of hovering, like it's gonna give me like a bestiality PJ or something. I don't know. But yeah, no. Started playing basically the same year that I won GenCon.
Wow.
My good friend Chad Baumgart taught me the ropes, and apparently I didn't even know this, but Schoenthal and Baumgart go like even further back to Lord of the Rings Decipher days.
Oh,
And I
wow.
thought that was awesome because that's how Baumgart also met Butzlaff and such. So like the roots go way back, and I played that card game too. But yeah, started playing in 2012 and jamming ever since. I played a lot during 2012, a lot during first edition, and yeah, I've just been dabbling in 2.0 ever since it came out.
So, Chris, is there a single Decipher game you didn't play?
Nope.
Yeah, there are several. I didn't play Trek at all.
Okay.
First edition or second edition. There were two separate games. I didn't play either of the other Star Wars games, Young Jedi or Jedi Knight, and I didn't play the Austin Powers card game.
I forgot about that game.
Yep.
I remember seeing it in old issues of
gave away a
Inquest.
card, so they were doing something right.
Yeah, until that guy stole all their money. And then, of course, the big black thing. Let me look actually on the stream. The big black thing here in the corner is... so there's Buzz. Yep, he is actually black on the stream, too. So Buzz is currently eating his breakfast because it's like, again, 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning in Sweden. So he'll be joining us, besides doing the technical side of thing, he'll be joining us in a little bit. So to sort of start off today and sort of, I guess, kind of what sparked Kidd wanting to come on was that we had our second time we had Seth Lowe on last week, which caused, what's the best way to put this, a bit of a shitstorm? Would that be the appropriate term? About sort of the nature of what it means to be a premier player. And so I thought we would just sort of start there, which is sort of where we left off last time. What did you all think of sort of that discussion? And what do you think of sort of the accusations that, sort of people are trying to divide the community into sort of this elite group, usually 1.0 players and some 2.0 players and sort of everyone else, and sort of the reaction to some of the things that people said? Who wants to go
clearly
first?
there's... Oh, go ahead.
No, go ahead, Kidd. You're the guest.
I was just going to say there's only one master race, and it's the Swedish meta. So anybody that's not in that, clearly a step below everyone. So
we have to be clear, though. The extended Swedish meta, right?
No. Just the core initial group that was created, plus Kristen Lentz, because she's not extended. She was part of the initial group. So, yeah. And then everybody else is just a step below that, regardless. So.
Okay. So we have the Swedes and everyone else. Okay, I can get that. How about you, Chris?
Yeah.
So you were involved sort of directly in sort of debating in the Facebook group about it. What do you think?
I don't have a lot to say other than I feel similarly to what I posted. I'm not really sure where the controversy came from. Like I woke up and there was like already a 45 comment thread, and I was like, "What happened? Did we get drunk and record a second episode?" So it was kind of bewildering to me. But then I went back and kind of looked at it and looked at some of the stuff that was said, and I feel like a lot of it was people not really understanding Seth's points and taking it differently than he intended. I think a lot of his points were intended as kind of teaching moments as opposed to, elitist moments. But as some have said, he can't really kind of flip that switch sometimes between his helping voice and his sort of top level player voice, to use polite terms. And I think that's where I got confused. And then of course, Aaron probably didn't help things much, bringing up that, oh, at Gen Con we all got together and said, oh, we want to make sure a first edition player takes it down. Which is an interesting. I mean, you have to respect his position to some degree. I know for myself, during store championship season, hey, Buzz is here.
Hey, Buzz is here. There we go.
Morning.
Your beard is looking very luscious today, Buzz.
Nice.
During store championship season, the first 2 or 3 store championships in California were won by new 2.0 players, and we were all kind of baffled. We were all sitting around, did we forget how to play this game? Like, is it that different a game that our skills don't transfer? And so it kind of took us a little bit to sort of get into it and sort of get into the flow of it. But I mean, in the end, we're all playing the same game now, so the history is kind of irrelevant at this point.
Yeah.
So the only thing I would say, like,
yeah, go ahead, Kidd.
about that, like, I think what 1.0 did for like people that jumped into 2.0 is it really like laid the core foundations of the game. It made your technical play just so much better than somebody who would just start second
Sure.
edition. But I completely agree that it's a completely different game.
But how has the transition been in Wisconsin? I mean, obviously Sam clearly transitioned really well to
Let's not forget
second
that
edition.
I top 4 World
Right.
Championship as well. That
Both of you
know,
did,
for-
Ben. But in general, what did your group of people sort of? How have you found the transition in Wisconsin? Sort of, was there been a big drop over between being one of the predominant 1.0 metas, or have you guys sort of somewhat seamlessly transitioned into second edition?
Yeah, I mean, I think results kind of speak for themselves. Look at Gen Con, right? I think we had of 6 people, or 6 or 7 people that played. Everybody but one of them day 2 with at least a 5 record or 4 record, right? There's 6 round, yeah, 6 and 3. And I mean, how many of us?
You're talking about the 2E tournament,
The what?
the War of the Five Kings.
No, I'm
I was
talking
talking about
about
Gen Con this
Shannon,
year.
you
Oh,
probably-
Gen Con. Okay.
The one you won, Chris.
yeah,
It's hard
that-
to. I'm sure. Yeah.
No, but like, I mean, Nick Hansen, he's a new kid, and the kid just like builds hilarious decks that we like to rag on him for, and he was awful at the beginning, but he's so adept quick at the game. I mean, it helps that obviously he had Gratz and I as playtest partners, so we tighten up stuff. But kid learns so quick and just learns to play the best deck or a deck that he likes to be greedy with and play naval. And I mean, it got him, to an undefeated record. So
Yeah, and he definitely got me with the naval when we played. He really messed me up with that thing. I still almost came back and won that one, if not for a misplay. But I was definitely impressed with his skill set, especially now knowing that he hadn't played any first edition. It's kind of hard to tell sometimes who is a no first edition person and who was a kind of late first edition person who didn't take the game seriously until second edition started. I know we've got a few of those in SoCal too, where they technically played first edition, but they didn't really play it at sort of our level. And then they came second edition, and they kind of hit the ground running.
yeah, I mean, he had no exposure to the game at all in first edition. He might have seen us play like a game or two, but he never even played a game to the best of my knowledge. And then, I mean, yeah, and then like regionals, even one of my buddies from the shop as well. He maybe played a few games of 1.0 and such. His name is Brad Eamon, and he took second at the first store championship, or not store championship, but regional he went to in Minnesota. So I mean, the wealth of the card shop as far as knowledge, play skill, is very immense. So I don't really think there's been any drop off.
Okay, so what's the best way to ask this question? Do we? I'm stuck trying to articulate this in a useful way. So, what do we think though of sort of the point that people really harped on, which was, of course, deck sharing? So we talked a little bit about this in our sort of recap of the first year of 1.0, but do we actually, or 2.0, excuse me, do we actually think that the community is more open to sort of deck sharing the way in which, before we were in the pre-show, Kidd and Chris were talking about Magic, right? Are we at the point where Magic, we're at Magic where the community is relatively open about tech and decks and all that kind of situation, or sort of do we still have that sort of reputation for secrecy? So let's explicitly talk about that for a little bit. What do we think about sort of the cultural change in 2.0? Like, do you think the community's sort of way of looking at the game on a meta strategic level has changed? How about you, Kidd? You go first.
I think there's bits of good and bad to that. Obviously, I think is it Hines or Glazer, whoever initiated that post way back in the day about getting deck sharing like to be an actual thing in 2.0, really set the tone for it. And I don't think Bratz or I are really opposed to sharing decks that we would play. No, obviously, if you're planning on going to Worlds and you played like a deck at Gen Con that you thought was, techie or whatever, then maybe you don't want to share that because you don't want like the secret to get out Worlds. But
Are we talking
generally,
hypothetically like a Martel Wolf deck or something like that, maybe?
I mean, that's just like a DC thing, right? Those guys don't want to share deck lists, and that's fine. That's completely their volition. We are obviously very good friends with most of them, but we don't care. We'll share deck. We don't care. At least the last one.
Has Sam published the deck that he was playing at Gen Con, or is he just? I know he's definitely talked about it like in person with me, and he.
I don't know if he's published it.
But yeah, it's definitely not unpublished. The closest we got was Jeremy Wright dissecting the private video out of the finals and trying to write an article about it.
What did he play?
That might be like somebody might have requested not
Night
to
Watch
have to share it.
Lion.
Okay.
Yeah, it was
Lion,
Night's Watch Laney.
It was
published in
Sam
my chat with him. I don't know.
Yeah, Sam was definitely talking to anyone who would listen to him about the deck at Gen Con, but I don't know if he had published it. Okay. So Chris, what since I don't think you were on the show when we talked about this, what is your take on sort of the shift in culture with deck sharing and publicly analyzing the meta between 1.0 and 2.0?
I don't see that there's been much of a shift. I think it's pretty similar. I think the one thing that we have lost is agotcards.org. That site was used to not only publish lists, but there was a lot of discussion on the site. And for some reason, ThronesDB, while it does have a lot of deck lists in terms of volume, the quality of the deck list maybe isn't quite as high on there as in 1.0. The winning lists don't get posted there necessarily all the time. There are some there, but even the ones that do get posted, there's maybe 2 or 3 comments or questions to the author of the deck, and then maybe a response. I know I tried to be good about that with my Gen Con deck, about keeping up with the questions that were asked, but overall, there hasn't been a lot of discourse on that site, whereas Agot Cards, we got these threads that went on for days about a specific deck. Sometimes to the detriment of some people in the case of a certain Era Maesters deck. But usually it was this calm discourse and interesting discourse, and people were throwing their own ideas back and forth. It wasn't a relationship where a lot of the comments I've seen on ThronesDB have been just straight up questions to the author. Why did you play this card? Why didn't you play that card? What plot did you open with? Real matter of fact stuff. Whereas I felt like the discussion on Agot Cards, and maybe this is just me looking back with rose-colored glasses, was of a much was not much, but a higher quality of discourse, where it was people offering their own suggestions on the deck, saying you could do this instead, or have you thought about taking the deck in this direction? Whereas we don't see that much of it in Thrones DB, which is, from what I can tell, the only place where decks really get posted. The card game DB site doesn't get that much in the way of decks, so that seems like our main resource. So in terms of where it was from first edition, I'd say it's probably about the same in terms of level of decks shared, but the discourse, I feel like, is not there, and maybe that's due to the fracturing of the community between Facebook and Card Game DB. Maybe that's due to the smaller card pool. There's just simply not as many directions to take a deck anymore. You can't really take a Bara Fealty deck and say, why don't you do this totally different thing with it? Because there isn't a totally different thing to do yet.
Yep.
So those are, I guess, my thoughts and suggestions on it.
Buzz?
I think until we have something big from FFG, where they post winners lists, even back from regionals or nationals or whatever, we can't really fault anyone for hiding deck lists, because it works. Works for DC, works for Swedish meta when we go to Stalag. We have all of our decks hidden, even the one we brought that won Worlds, we brought several of to Stalag, and even though it was streamed, it wasn't really deconstructed that well. So it,
Well, it's
it
Dark
works.
Wings deck, 75
Yeah, yeah.
cards.
Yes, and weird raiders and stuff. But yeah, it would be great if we had a system that forced everyone. I think it would be good for the community. I think it would be a good thing to write articles about for FFG or anyone who wants to, right? But yeah, I don't see the hate right now, because right now we don't force anyone, and right now it works to hide it. You win tournaments by hiding it. So
How much of that do you attribute to the card pool again? Like, how much of that is he's playing naval, or he's playing treachery, or he's playing, specific answers or specific threats, where there's not really, it's more of a binary yes or no, as opposed to like, is he doing this way, this angle, or this angle?
I definitely tech in my decks. If I get a deck from Sam or from someone else, I will change it up a little bit with techs, because I like to play techs. I'm like other side of the coin from DC, who never would put a tech card in their deck.
That's not true.
Oh, here we go, kid. So why is it not
That's
true?
what they said to me. I'm just rehashing what they're saying, right?
Now Corey, since he's the
Okay.
mastermind always, right? He will chastise the shit out of us. But then I'm still gonna play whatever the hell I want.
Okay,
I
but
don't
you're
have
not
to listen
DC.
to Corey.
You're the extended Swedish meta.
It is not extended, but it is full on.
Okay.
So Corey's
Sure,
really
right.
not, for you guys, Corey's not really the sort of black hooded figure that everybody says. He's more of like a Dumbledore, where he's guiding your actions as opposed to forcing them.
For the Wisconsin guys.
Plus, I'm wearing
for
the
Seth,
shirt
that's
tonight,
entirely
too, so
different.
fitting.
Yeah.
So actually, that's actually an interesting question, Kid. Like, at Worlds last year, you were playing the Harrenhal deck. This is for 1.0, right? That Seth took to the final table, right? But you're playing it slightly differently, right?
Oh,
Like,
the fucker was completely different.
Okay. So what
I,
what was the difference between the two decks, and sort of how does that show the difference between sort of your and Sam's attitude and Corey and Seth's, since you guys are so influenced by each other?
So obviously there were certain card selections that were justified in their deck, but not in mine. What I was going for was a get ahead, stay ahead strategy, and I didn't even play Valor because, like I said, I was just playing a get ahead, stay ahead strategy. So my plot deck was 5/2 claimers, Kidd plot because it was busted in 1.0, and then it got nerfed in 2.0. And then I was playing a March to the Wall, which saw I don't think any play in 1.0. And the reason I was playing March is because obviously it's added military, but in addition to that, it was sort of my top after I killed all the other
Hold on.
they were gonna like
We're losing
plan on.
Kidd.
Yeah, Kidd, we lost you for a second. Hold on.
God,
Okay, you just have to repeat that because we
where
heard
you
static. We lost you with your
Marched.
discussion about Marched. Yep.
Yeah, so obviously it's predominantly played in 2.0 now, and I attribute that to just like the lack of chud, and
Excuse me.
that's basically a curve situation because of the gold curve, where it hits, like a 4 or 5, maybe even a 7 coster if you get rid of all of their cheap stuff. And it didn't have as big of an effect in 1.0 because there was, a plentiful amount of chud. Or it would hit like a 2 coster, just some kind of low impact, character, and it didn't really influence the game. But I had it in my deck specifically as, an additional military claim plus a way to get rid of the pipe. And, what were they? I don't even remember their plot list, but they had Valor in their deck. They were playing a more slower grinder type of deck that had the ability to get ahead and stay ahead, but also had more. That's the
Okay. All right. So I have a question from our let's sort of in chat troll, which is softball question. Which meta, if any, will win Worlds? So let's do that that one, since I'm sure all three of you have very different opinions, and I get to be the tie-breaking vote since no one in New York is going to Worlds this year. So except technically the Brotherhood guys, but not New York, and I would never cheer for them. So which why don't we go with Chris? Which meta is going to win Worlds this year?
I mean, are any of us not going to say our own? Like, it seems like kind of a softball question, but I mean, when you look at it from the outside in, you have to figure like we're coming off a GenCon win. We have a strong team coming. Like that was just an accident almost that we won there. So I would watch out for us.
Who are coming in force? Is DC coming?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
And how many from
Wisconsin, right?
SoCal?
What's that?
How many from SoCal?
Let me count. Somebody else start, and I'll count in my head.
Kids, both DC and Wisconsin are going, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
All
So
right. Only
the
one
more
Swede this year, right?
What was that?
one
It's from
Nordic
Sweden.
player.
Just one Nordic player.
Yeah. I think the biggest density of good players who represent, I mean, the people who represent the most has the highest chance of winning if they are good players. So I clearly think the Nordic champion, who's one player, will have the highest chance of winning. But DC and SoCal has a high chance if they're sending more than 5 or 6 players.
Yeah, I'm at 10 off the top of my head, and I might be missing some.
And Warsaw is like 2 or 3.
I mean, Wasa is Hansen, me, Bratz, Jean Peters, although he's not that good because he likes to punt. That's a shot at the old roommate as well. But no, he's actually like pretty good too. My buddy, yeah, a couple guys from Madison that are part of the Wasa meta. It's Ben Wesolowski and Ryan Leonard. And Ryan Leonard had a really good showing at GenCon this year too.
I like
He
Ryan.
went 7-2. Just a solid dude. Really, really knowledgeable about the game. Very opinionated, but very knowledgeable.
Was he playing Klansman at Worlds last year? Is that right?
He was. Yep,
Oh,
he
yeah,
top
I think
16.
I think I
Yep,
played
he
him,
top
yeah.
16.
That deck was good.
Yeah,
So
I mean, Bratz played card for card the same deck, I think, and ran into some really atrocious matchups. So,
I
I mean,
really do
that's
think all you need is a good run.
yeah, right, exactly.
The best player who can perform when he identifies that he's running good, he will win. You just need to be lucky that day and play your best. That's all you can do. And the best player with some luck wins always. It's a card game.
Yep,
And
that's exactly.
if we play on over 5,000 years, every single player, depending on how good they are, will win one or several times. If you're good, you will do it more often. If you're extremely lucky, you will do it more often. But I mean, consistency. I think we should watch out for people who've won previously. They will come into the cut quite easily, probably, and then you will see one of them have a good run and win.
Sure, and we touched on that a little bit last week. That it's not a matter of who wins the tournament that should necessarily be looked at as, oh, this is the only player who you can consider did well at this tournament. After you get into the cut, it's single elimination. It's luck of the draw to some degree. I mean, we saw even going back to like the finals of first edition, not last year, but the year before, when Alvaro's an insane player and he just got completely run over in the finals. Like, if that's a 2 out of 3 match, like, he could have won. It's just kind of the luck of the draw when you get that far. So anything beyond the cut is at least somewhat based on luck.
So, I disagree that Alvaro could have won 2 out of 3. Not only because he played Sam Bratz, but because Bratz actually beat him 2 out of 2 in that tournament. And
sure, no, I'm not arguing that.
Matchup,
I'm not arguing Alvaro's a better player than Sam or that Alvaro's deck was better than Sam. I'm arguing that the sample size is too small to determine.
Yeah.
And in 2 other games, Sam could have drawn terribly.
Yeah, I mean, that's definitely true. Card games are card games.
Yeah.
And yeah, they are very even players. So
top 8 War of the Five Kings. I played Bratz. I had a superb start. I was super lucky, and then he found the 2 cards he needed, and he won. Bam. So, I mean.
So at least you didn't punt by walking your Varus into a Varus. Or just not going for the Widow's Wail and punting the top 4 match. So
it's rough to watch.
I remember how I talked to you, I think, immediately after the Dracarys game, and you looked like you were gonna either strangle someone in the audience or strangle yourself. You were quite upset at that Dracarys play. So
well, I didn't do it. It was Mr. Jacob Holtman.
Oh, it was Jakob. Oh, okay. Then why did was that Jakob?
Yes, I played him in the top 16.
I thought that was you. Oh, okay.
No, I played him in the top 16, and he actually, I think he either opposed or made an intrigue challenge with Varus. And yeah, you don't do that against Targ main deck ever.
Yeah, that's not a recipe for success.
So my guess for Worlds this year is actually it's gonna be basically made up exactly the same as it was last year, which is it's going to be like 4 Europeans, 4 SoCal people. Well, did they cut the top 8 or top 16 at GenCon?
Top 16. Oh,
top 16.
GenCon at GenCon.
Yeah. Was top 8?
Yes.
So okay, it will be 2 Europeans, 2 SoCal, 2 or 3 DC people, maybe 2 or 3 SoCal instead, / Wisconsin people, and 2 people who had a good day that day. Like, I think it's gonna, and then any of those 8 people could win. Like, I mean, that was the main thing that I saw having watched both although my memory is increasingly spotty of Worlds last year, watched the Worlds both 2.0 and the 1.0 Joust really closely, which is that once they're in there, like there's no prediction of who's going to win. So I think it's just going to be which team, and I think it's going to basically boil down to SoCal, Wisconsin / DC, and Europe. If they choose to play as a team again this year, maybe since there's not going to be the big like cohort you guys had last year, right, Buzz? Of sort of
No.
like with the pink shirts and the chanting and
No.
all that stuff. So maybe
Next year.
Europe won't next year. So maybe this year might be the year that the Americans just run right over the Europeans since you guys aren't unified. But who knows? So, but like last year, Euros were like on fire. Like
last year or from
Yeah.
last week. You're sure creating some this week.
I'm trying.
Can't
Because apparently we're the third or fourth string team here, so I've got to create some controversy, which is that if the Europeans don't play as, yes, I will say this, if the Europeans just go as isolated individuals, they will have a weaker showing than they had at Worlds 2015.
Well, we're sure as shit terrible at hockey.
My gosh, that was awkward, man.
Let's not talk
Alright.
about it.
Chris,
Yeah.
so you have some questions for us?
Sure do. Well, we'll skip Joe from Cincinnati's because Kidd has proven himself to be an excellent guest, so we won't ask him whether he's going to be equally insulting and condescending as our previous guest, which was his question. Let's skip to Brad has a question again, kind of a follow-up to his question last week about whether Worlds or Stalik was a better tournament. He wants to know if he should skip Worlds to travel to Stalik next year.
Can you
I
give
would
me
can. Yes.
We're strongly considering going to Stalik next year, so I would say definitely, if you can afford to get to Stalik and you can make it happen, make it happen. You can go to Worlds any year.
Oh,
Yeah.
shit.
I mean, that's the key difference for Americans. Again, not for Europeans.
Of course.
We have a question from I think Discord. Someone
Discord,
asked it last night. Well, my time, early morning, your time. He said, "Interesting question of the day. This is Swing Yankee. How do I make a meta of new players good? For context, I built a few decks and tested them for a big tournament recently. I crushed everyone in my meta handily with a couple of them, and I went to the actual tournament and got wrecked. So, how do you train for big tournaments if your meta is weak? How do you, as a group, become more competitive?"
Do one of you guys want to take it first, or shall I?
Kidd, what do you guys do? I'm curious to hear your
Yeah.
answer on this.
Hold on. Repeat the question. I was getting owned by my cat. He
All
was
right,
climbing
so-
on my TV like an asshole.
Classic cat aggro.
The gist of it, how do I make a meta of new players good? They are all new. They go to big tournaments and get wrecked, even though they've play tested that they consider be good.
Yeah, so the only advice, well, not the only advice, but the main advice I have is obviously the more you play, the better you're gonna be, right? In terms of learning, subtle nuances of matchups, to learning what the key cards that are the cogs of your deck, and learning what plots are good in situations and others, I mean? Building your deck is something that comes with years of experience in order to be a, how do I say, like, not a perfected deck, but one that actually has the capability of being, that just comes, with time. And the more time you put in, it's usually going to reflect the outcome of your games.
Sure.
But, in terms of, like, I don't want to sound stuff.
Hold on, Kidd.
What?
Stop for a second. Just your internet has decided to slow to a crawl, so we'll just give it a second. All right, try again.
Are we back?
Yeah,
Yes.
you're back. Yeah. Just repeat your very last thing. Everything up until your last thing. Last statement was clear, or relatively so.
Yeah, like I said, I don't want to sound elitist, but the better player that you're playing against and testing against is going to be more valuable. That's just it's just what it is, you know. I don't want to sound like an ass, but
When
I think that's the. Go ahead, Buzz.
okay, so when I introduce a new player and play my deck against him, I don't necessarily get the best knowledge out of the game that I can. Uh, so instead, I try to identify while I'm playing him and teaching him the game. I'm trying to identify, it's my deck doing what it's supposed to do. So I have my deck has a philosophy. It has something set out to do. Does it do it well? And playing against a new player is one of the best times to be concentrating on that because it's easier. You don't have to try and mind game Hultman in in a game of wits. I can just sit down, teach him the game, and while I'm doing that, relax and like, okay, is it doing the correct things? Do I need to draw the correct cards, or does it just keep the game going by itself? Also, um, I had something more about that, but I forgot it now.
We can come back,
I
Chris.
think in terms of building an entire meta as opposed to just tuning one deck for a good tournament when you're not surrounded by good players. I think it's important to sort of be more open in your gameplay, especially early on. You know, when you're playing against a newer player, don't just sit there and blow raspberries at them when you're crushing them. You gotta like maybe play open handed, do something to where they feel like you're sort of helping them along and you, maybe both sides of you get it like, oh, I hadn't thought of that as an out for him, but now that I see that, how does that change my play? And so that's it goes back to a lot of what Kidd said, where just repetitions, like practice makes. I don't want to say practice makes perfect, but it certainly helps. It improves your technical skills, and practice while an opponent is watching and can see what you're doing, and maybe point things out is even more valuable.
I try to, when I play against a new player, not disrupt the flow of the round. So we play out the round. I help him with anything he asks about. Then, when the round is over, I will point out things. I will ask him questions, and I will uh, discuss some of his or her moves, right? Um, but not like, oh, he ambushes in a Widow's Wail to defend, and it's a really bad move. I won't say, yeah, okay, can do that, but you can do this instead, or haha, that's a bad move. I will let him do the move. I will let the round play out, because if I just say, oh, that's not such a good move, instead, at the end of the round, he will see the consequences of that move, probably, or I can explain it better.
When you say end of the round, do you stop him after that turn's over and explain how the
Yep.
turn would have gone differently, or do you wait for the whole game to be over?
No, each round I think you can, without disrupting and giving out knowledge kind of stuff, because the round plays out completely differently if I say I have a Widow's Wail in my hand and stuff like
Sure.
that. So I'd rather make him have him make the mistake and get crushed over it, and he easier understands what I'm telling him that's not a good move. Uh, that's kind of the gist of it.
Yeah, no, I like that.
And I mean, there's a lot of things here, right? Because there's sort of two questions in there. One, which is, how to build a group, because that's a difference than like building a meta. Like the most successful metas, I think, are ones that have a really strong, like if we're talking about going to big tournaments like Worlds, GenCon, style events, have a strong group identity. They have a sense of each other. So becoming friends, like actually just not just making the game mean something to your group beyond just all of us are going to go to this tournament, like developing connections. Like that's when things really clicked for me when I was playing really well with New York, which is when all of us sort of had a really strong group identity and we were talking both about the game but also about our own lives. So like getting people to sort of click on an interpersonal level is really helpful. But another thing to do is like one of the things I've noticed, and I had a little bit of trouble with this, and I definitely had trouble with some people when we were testing for Gen Con this year, is people who came from sort of a more casual board gaming background, is they don't necessarily know what playtesting in a card game entails, which is that the point of individual games is not to win. Right? When you're doing tons of playtesting rounds, your goal is not necessarily just to smash your opponent no matter what. It's for both players who are trying to get better and understand their decks to sort of see how the decks are playing. And not just, oh, I'm going to try to just, I'm a B level player and the player I'm playing with is a D level player, let's for example say. And just for me to own them over and over and over and over and over and over again, sort of that might feel good for you for that 2 or 3 hours that you're doing that. They're not going to learn anything and you're not going to learn anything. Doing the kind of things that Buzz was talking about, which is talking about the end of rounds, which may cause them to suddenly be able to beat you because they realized, oh, that's an interaction that Plaza Punishment has with Dracarys that they may not have realized before or something like that. But also what Dan and Dave Stroms did for me, which is that like when they thought I was making a bad play, they would stop and have me explain the logic of what I did. And then we would talk about sort of, okay, well, here's the logic of, say, what Dave, who was standing behind me and could see my hand, he's like, well, here's what I might have done. Here's the logic that my play would be. And then Dan would come and say, oh, here's the logic of what I think you should do. And then, I might keep my play or I might take it back or something like that. And then I was just like learning that there's multiple routes, and what might seem intuitive initially to sort of your way of thinking, which could come from other card games you played or other things like that, isn't necessarily the best Thrones thing. Is just being open and understanding is also a really key way to getting your meta stronger.
Sure.
Yeah, when you don't have a good player who you can fall back on and ask questions, you might want to, preferably after the round, I think, go through the round and see what could be changed, what you can discuss, and if you can't come to a good answer, like what should we do in this situation, you write it down and then you take it online. You ask, guys, can a good player help me with? We don't really know what to do in this situation. I think writing down scenarios that you feel are problematic and you can't solve, come with them to a player and ask the questions. People are very happy to answer, I think.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Anybody that wants to ask questions, I'm all ears for. I will speak my mind and be happy to. And that's the same as, all the people I know. Every one of you guys, all great dudes, and I know you'd gladly help anybody that wanted to get better at the game. That's just the way we are. So I agree.
Yeah, I mean, you definitely if you are at like a regional, or you're at Gen Con, like don't be afraid to go up to people that you may see on podcasts and things like that and talk to them. Like, maybe they won't necessarily tell you their deck in detail in the middle of a tournament, but certainly once the tournament is over, they will definitely talk about the choices that they made, why they were playing this, all kinds of things. Like, I mean, like I was saying earlier, like Sam and I had like a 25-minute conversation about the deck that he was playing after he was out of the tournament. He was talking to anyone who came up to him and wanted to talk about the deck because he was excited to share it and all that kind of stuff. So like and same with Chris. I mean, when he came sort of down from that really high point of having won the thing, was like willing to talk to anyone. And Jakob was the same way at Worlds. Like there's this big mysticism, right, that comes from oh, they're the winners, right? But this isn't Magic. This isn't professional sports.
Just win $100,000 for the tournament.
Right.
We're not, we're not douchebags.
But also, I think there is a sense of pride in them, even if they do bad. They really want to tell you about their good deck that should have worked, and if they're doing good, then maybe they won the whole thing. They're like, hey, now I can share the deck and I can bask in the glory, and it's also a reason for you to go up, and they will be happy to share.
Right. At Gen Con, I had that experience. James Wansley was non-stop talking about how his Sun Garden deck should have won Gen Con the entire weekend, like non-stop.
So true.
And that's like 100% true. And then Chris was also talking about like why he made the specific decisions he made in that Landing Dragon deck, and he literally gave it to Seth to play in the melee. Like that's how little like sort of closed-mindedness there is can be like on the ground, as much as people may have online personas and that kind of stuff.
And I think there's some, there's sort of these, there's this perception that before a tournament you can't talk about anything. Before meaning like the weeks and months leading up to it. Whereas I think to some degree you're not gonna give away your secret. Like I'm not gonna come on the podcast and tell everybody about our Worlds deck. But at the same time, if somebody comes to me and asks me questions like, "What do you think of this deck?" or "Where do you think this card's placed?" I'm not going to lie about it. Like, there's no profit in it for me. Like, the having better players throughout the community is better for all of us. Like, we want to play against the best competition, and if somebody has potential to be good competition, I want to make them a better player. I don't want to just hide everything, and be off on a mountaintop. All right, we good on that question? We got more if you want to.
Oh yeah,
All right.
absolutely.
Real
Good discussion.
So Brad again would like to know, what is this Knights deck that I hear people talking about? I see them referenced as decent, but from what I can tell, they have literally never won an event that matters. Is it just a meme or is it good? It seems like Tyrell has a bunch of those guys now.
I'm assuming he means Knights in that sense.
Yes, I believe he means Knights the trait, not Knights Watch. So.
Well, I mean, in Melee, Knights won Gen Con. Right? So,
Was he playing the
Gen Con
Knight
is
Squad?
American Melee.
and the Gen Con American Melee. Yes, it was. He is running. I was playing that exact deck. Yes, there's one copy of the Knight's Plot is in that deck. I mean, it's certainly not a meme. And people did win before First Snow. A few people won Star Championships, right? With the Knights deck. This is where Aaron would be good to have.
Kind of. The problem was that like the first Snow came out like the pack after the Night Plot, so there was like a real thin margin of time where it was like crazy good, and people were worried about it running things over until we got First Snow, and then we got First Snow and it went away again.
Yeah, it completely gets wrecked by First Snow, but in a non-First Snow meta, it's really good. It would of course suffer once again to Craven, one of those decks who wants to attack. Just kneel out the good
fucking
guys with
card is
Reno.
just so ridiculous.
Yeah.
Why is it ridiculous, Kid? Why is Craven so
kidding me?
ridiculous?
Are you, you're just trolling me like Peter's.
I'm getting you to talk. That's what I'm doing here. So, yes, I am slightly trolling you, but I'm doing it to get you to say.
I don't want to explain what efficiency is, right?
Yeah, well, one gold, they can't attack. Well, it is terminal.
Oh my god, that's a relevant keyword in 2.0.
It's
So
worse
balanced.
against some decks, of course. I think Baratheon doesn't care. You put it on Robert,
I don't agree with that.
They can win still. And Stark can win still if you put them in the contact. Their renowned characters can defend and they can win dominance. But
The wall too. I mean,
yeah. If you put it on a Lani character or big rushy like Randall, you stop them in their tracks. They are an offensive deck. They claim power on offense, not defense, and so it's even better against Lani. It's even better against Tyrell than being a ridiculously good card.
Sure.
Barry also doesn't care because it's a condition, and
Sure.
they have that sweet maester that takes care of those things for them.
Yes. I
But
hate Barrow
yes.
so damn much. And I play Stark, which is like doesn't even make sense, but I just hate Barra. God.
All right.
Yeah. But anyway, Knights is a real thing, Brad. Like, it's a legit thing, not just a meme. Both in Melee, 100%, Joust, a little less.
It's a theme that will come back, I think. You will see a tournament and suddenly there's a really good deck, Knights deck, and it will be viable. The community loves Knights and the FFG loves Knights, so we will see it again. It was really good back this spring, and it will be good again sometime.
Yep, definitely need some 4-drops, right?
Yep.
Well, it just got the 4-drop this Summer Night. He's
It
pretty
does
good.
help.
Sure.
So
Oh,
all right,
Need
Kidd
more.
just spoiled that they're not playing
Yeah, right.
Tyrell Knights with the 4-drop, with the look on his face there.
To
Yeah,
be fair, I
that
haven't
was
even bought the
sarcastic.
latest chapter pack, so
I mean, the
forgot
other
about
thing,
that card.
First Snow itself is a flop that cycles in and out.
Particularly these days.
But we are getting Valor, which is going to do the same thing but worse to the deck. So I don't think that I don't think it's going to come back soon. But you're definitely right that it's a theme that we'll see. Like there's going to be cards coming out for it.
That's actually a really interesting point, Chris. So you would say Valor is worse for that deck than First Snow? I don't.
Well, with the current iteration, because all the 4 guys that I just talked about are all going to die too. Like they don't have any protection, so it's going to get your Arbor Knights and your Summer Knights. I'm talking about specifically the Tyrell version with the. I mean, that First Snow they picks up the little guys, but what does it really lose? Like the Hedge Knight? Do you care?
Yeah. Well, I think one of the problems though, First Snow had claim, so it let them hit you, and then like so you only had Randall left, and Randall got hit by the military claim that you couldn't defend and all that, or got marched away, which I think Valor is a little easier to play around for that deck than First Snow is.
Kinda, but a rush deck only gets one shot at winning.
That's true.
That's not necessarily true, I think, with Tyrell. They have the economy and they have the draw to reflood after Valor. Maybe?
Interesting. We'll see. It depends. It's also going to depend on how Valor interacts with the meta, and we don't even know what else might be in that box that'll cause it problems. So
If a Knights deck,
take no buzz.
if a Knights deck is going to be successful, it will need to have the tools to overcome Valor. And I think they might have it already. We'll see.
I think Buzz's point is
James will build something.
I think Buzz's point is, I think, the best one, because I think the tools to overcome First Snow are a lot more difficult for the Tyrell player to come up with than the tools to play around Valor, I would say, because of that specific
so, yeah.
the way in which the cards they printed, like the fact that there's these specific group of cards that are really good, turn further down the cost curve for that deck. Valor kills everyone indiscriminately, so if you can play around Valor, it's a little less troublesome than First Snow, but maybe not. I could be completely wrong.
Sidebar for 1 second.
Sure.
Hedge Knight. My good friend from Madison, Ben Wesolowski, one of his favorite cards. Guy just loves his Knights. Played like House Day and Knights and stuff and all that stuff in 1.0. And he got married this summer. And Bratz's gift was obviously a card with some cash and 3 Hedge Knights. Now, the funny thing about it, right, is he had 3 with him when we were going together because we were ushers for the wedding. He lost them in my car. And I think they like fell out of the door or something when we stopped to pick up pizza. So he had to go get more from Ryan Leonard. And then I think he still forgot to put him in the card or some shit. It was just a mess of freaking stupid Hedge Knights. But I'll never forget the shit. It was hilarious.
That is kind of great.
You guys need to ask him about it.
All right, so I've got a question that I came up with on my own today.
Oh,
We
okay,
need-
here we go.
We need for second edition. We need the new deck title for when somebody asks you what you're playing and you don't want to volunteer it. What do you tell them? In first edition, the answer was always neutral Night's Watch, which meant the neutral house card, which you could play only neutral characters, and all your other characters were a little less expensive, but it was not a great choice as a house card. And then Night's Watch were even worse than they were in the core set. So whenever somebody would ask and you didn't want to tell them, you'd say neutral Night's Watch. So what is our second edition equivalent for when you don't want to volunteer what your deck is? What do you tell them that's so absurd that would never happen?
In the Northeast, for a long time, it was Night's Watch Fealty, but that's not the case
Tyrell?
anymore.
Yeah, that's not going to work anymore.
While you're thinking about that, our go-to deck was Tari Night's Watch. That was the thing.
Night's Watch? Okay,
Yeah.
I can see that too as being a good one.
Yeah.
And
we're
now it's
talking about
possible
in first
in-
edition?
Yeah, the
in
first
first edition, it was for us, for the Stockholm meta, it was when someone asked you and you were like, well, obviously I played Targ Night's Watch. What do you think I play? Second edition.
A hard question to answer. Answer.
I don't think we've come up with anything in Stockholm yet.
Maybe that's a good sign. It means there's nothing that's so unviable that people would say it was absurd.
I think the
mean-
closest thing might be Tyrell right now. I know that will break James's heart. But
You can say Tyrell Banner of the Rose.
Tyrell Banner of the Rose. I mean, generally anything Banner of itself tends to be sort of the trolly.
You'd think
answer
that,
people
but
give.
a Lanny Banner to Lion actually top forward the Siege of Highgarden tournament up in NorCal a couple weekends ago.
Was it legal? An actual banner of the like? Were the appropriate number of non-loyal cards were there? Because
Yes, it was actually. The list is posted on Thrones DB, along with an explanation about why he legitimately ran Banner of the Lion, which
Shield team.
I'm not going to say it was convincing, but it was more convincing than I expected it to be. I'll say that. Like I actually played him, and I was like, "What is this? Is this a serious thing that's happening right now?" And it was.
Is there like actually a difference though between No Agenda and Banner of a Lion, like on a gameplay?
Not between No Agenda and Banner of the Lion. True, he could have gone No Agenda, but I guess he figures there's literal no advantage to No Agenda, so maybe just troll people and throw them off.
Although theoretically, your deck can be illegal though, if you don't have the appropriate number of non-loyal cards.
I got
Unlike
an idea from chat. Joe Silent said Nightwatch Reigns, but I mean Baratheon Reigns of Castamere. I think that can work.
That's a good answer. I like that.
Yeah, or Stark Reigns of Castamere is also another.
Well,
is that something you're gonna think of?
Should work. Could work.
What do you
Right.
think, Kidd? A Stark intrigue deck. You're the big Stark player here.
There's some good intrigue characters in Stark right now that are cheap too. Like let's not forget they have, I don't need to name them all, but
Speaking of Reigns, our next question comes from Coolio, who would like to know, can we get odds on whether or not the Lanny box will be out and legal for Worlds and the Laughing Tree tournament ahead of Worlds?
Oh my god, that is the worst kind of self-promotion. I love it. Yes, the box, no Valor is what I'm.
Oh yeah, certainly. I think at this point the Valor ship has sailed. I don't think there's much question about that. We have a street date for Pack 3 finally, which is October 6th. So October 6th we get our third CP. They're not going to release a fourth CP and a box in the 2 weeks remaining between then and the drop dead date for World. So I think Valor's completely out the window. I hope there's a Lions box. I really do, because these huge bubbles of time with no cards and no changes to the metagame are just absurd.
it's a killer for sure.
I think it's easily, the LCG model is, I think, in many ways superior to the CCG model, but the CCG model dumps so many cards on you at once that these gap periods are so much more acceptable.
And it allows the metagame to sort of more organically. There's a sort of call and response style to the metagame where it's this is the dominant deck. Okay, what beats the dominant deck? Okay, now this is the dominant deck. Okay, what beats that one? Well, do we go back here or do we go up here? There's real interesting interplay when you get 150 cards all at once as opposed to 20 all at once. And it's a point that Ruben from Europe has been espousing for quite a while now, that he has not found satisfying about the LCG model, and I tend to agree with him.
Yeah, I think if we get the Lions box like 1 month ahead of Worlds, and it will be legal, it's really always really interesting to see what the good players do with that time. Like, what do they come up with for Worlds, and hopefully we will then see some really interesting decks, and hopefully we will see people come up with interesting decks, and then some people will have come up with that and already created counters, and that's always fun to see, I think.
I mean, there's a part of me that feels like for the World Championship, whatever FFG can dump on them, they should just make legal, even if they can't do the four. I really don't like the 14-day waiting period, but I particularly don't like it for the World Championship. Like, if you feel like you're comfortable with playing at the World Championship level, I feel like you should be able to adapt to them dumping product on you at the last couple of minutes. They could also solve this problem by fully spoiling boxes well before release, so then it doesn't matter to a hardcore playtesting player whether or not the cards are printed in time, like within 14 days. Like, you could theoretically be playing with proxies, like similar to high level Magic, which is that once those cards are spoiled, professional players and serious non-professional players make proxies and go out playtesting. And people do that in Thrones too. The problem is it's hapdash in Thrones, or haphazard rather, in Thrones.
I think FFG is very fond of casual players opening up a pack and not knowing what's inside. Mm-hmm. Even though it's LCG and not a pack, like a CCG pack.
No, that's certainly true. I think the reason why they like that is because, a CCG pack, even if 250 cards of, based on the rarity they're going to be in here, what those 250 cards are. You're not going to know exactly what 13 whatever you're going to get. With the LCG, you do know what you're going to get, so that they want to somehow create that feeling of, oh, there's going to be a surprise in here, which again makes sense for casual players, less sense for, I think, the kind of players that are listening to this or currently on this podcast.
Sure.
I agree.
Any more, Chris?
That's all the questions we have. So unless anybody has another.
Is there anything in the current Twitch chat before we sort of?
I scrolled a bit.
Trolls.
Some trolls and some fun.
The only thing I got from my boys is that we need a bad guy on the cast. We don't have that good guy, bad guy.
That's true. Glazer isn't here. Seth isn't here. So it is all four relatively good guys. So,
right.
With our strengths and our weaknesses, but this is the nice guy crew, I guess.
Some might disagree.
Apparently, there is a thing that is, there's too much of a good thing.
Yeah, there we go. So
it's a real statement.
So does anybody have any rampant self-promotion before I let us go?
Nordics this week.
Nordics is this week, and the Nordic champion will be going to Worlds, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
That's cool.
So if you were trying to follow the Worlds meta and we're trying to create storylines, which we talked about last week, this is sort of one of the big European representatives will be chosen this weekend. So you should definitely pay attention.
Intel on who from Europe is already planning to go to Worlds?
That's what I was just going to ask you.
Not Alvaro.
I think there are some of the crew who always is going, like Roy from Norway, I think. I know that the UK, the Spanish, French, maybe the Italian national champions are going.
How many of those have already happened, though?
Most of them, I think.
Have they? Is the French? Oh, the French national champion.
The French is done, yeah, I think.
Who's the French national champion? Do we know?
I don't know.
Anyone know?
I don't think it's name drop guy, sadly. Well, that's a good thing also, but I'll have some names for next time.
Next episode.
Sure.
Are you going, Buzz?
I'm not playing in the Nordic Championships. The plan was to win that and go, right?
To Worlds. Are you coming to Worlds?
So the plan was to win Nordic Championships and go, but
Gotcha.
but I'm not playing. I'm TOing. So if maybe Jacob wins, then we're like, maybe.
All right, so that means that everyone should be cheering for Jakob then.
See, now I'm conflicted because Tomas insisted that I root for him so I could get those sweet foil house cards.
I mean, I'm
Tomas
cheering for
and
Jacob. Swedish meta all the way.
Tomas and some Frenchies and some Netherlands crew is coming to Nordics.
Where's the Nordic Championship?
Stockholm, here in Stockholm.
Okay.
You had self-promotion as well?
Yes, I do, because New York, we're hosting Thronetoberfest, which is the 22nd of October, which is a tournament that moves around. Last year was in Boston. The year before that, it was in Washington, D.C. This year, it's New York. This is the 4th annual. There will be some Oktoberfest-themed prize support, which I'm not quite ready to announce, mostly because it hasn't arrived yet. So I can't take pictures. But it's going to be a really fun tournament. Now, I will complain a little bit because it wouldn't be Second Sons if we didn't. We had hoped to make this a draft format tournament. I reached out to FFG multiple times about whether or not. Well, first I talked to our store, which is a distributor, and they said they couldn't. FFG had said nothing about it. So then I reached out to FFG a few times, and I've heard absolute silence about it. I talked to our store again; they don't have an idea. So
you want info?
Sure.
My plan was to have it at our side event at Nordics as well. Guys, please help me. So in the end, I contacted Evan Johnson this week, and I think draft is plagued by the delays as well, by the same delays for chapter pack thing. So
ridiculous.
Okay.
So
well, that's good to know.
Moment. Yeah.
So the key thing is, if the Complete Strategist, which is the store that's hosting it here in New York City, has the draft packs 1 week in advance, so we can actually announce it and not just the day people show up be like, oh, we're actually doing this draft. Put your Joust deck away. We are going to do it as a draft tournament if we can, but right now it is a Joust constructed tournament. The surprise port will not change if we are able to run it as a draft. But if you are in the Northeastern United States, you should totally come out. It's always New York City tournaments are my favorite tournaments in the United States, and that's not just because I host them and dump money into them, but they're always a really good time, and you can meet some personalities like Glazer and all that other kind of stuff. So it'll be a fun time.
What if you're not in the Northeast?
Well, Chris, then you should fly to, you were at Winds of Winter, why don't you come to Red Saturday this year or something like that? We have even more people for Red Saturday than they have for Winds of Winter up in Boston. Although the Fitchers are the best hosts, so I don't trade something.
No denying that.
So, anyway, any other final parting thoughts before we go?
Thanks for having me on, boys.
Of course, Kidd. You were a great guest, and yeah. So I want to thank Kidd for having us on. One quick, being on, right? I don't know, one of those things. It shows you the alcohol is catching up with me. One final thing, we are going to be the 2 episodes in a row was to de-link my schedule with the White Book from Second Sons. So it will be next week, no episode, and then there will be an episode the following week. So we're going to go back to our traditional schedule going forward, one hopes. So besides that, I want to thank everybody for watching / listening, and have a wonderful week or weekend or day, whatever.